In this project, we got together with people from different campuses and we had to research what exponential functions were and how they affected the Chernobyl explosion. Exponential graphs. An exponential function has an equation of f of x equals a raised to x, a being a constant number and x being a variable. A is any value greater than 0. Basic graphs. There are two cases that we can have. When a is between 0 and 1, the graph will look like this, and it would be decreasing. And when a is greater than 1, the graph will look like this, and it will be increasing. All basic graphs have a horizontal asymptote at y equals 0. Its domain is all real numbers, and they have a range of 0, infinite. Its reference point is 0, 1, and they all pass through the points 0, 1, and 1, base.
The Chernobyl project occurred when a bunch of experienced engineers were making a safety test on a reactant. This occurred in October 1989, when the USSR had commanded for the test to be able to measure all the effects and to keep the population safe from any dangers that could happen when it was used officially. The problem was the difference of opinions and ideas that workers in the control room had. Dyatlov, the chief in charge, wanted to violate the safety rules that were created as limits for the reactant to prevent any dangers. He wanted to make the test in a temperature lower than what his boss had ordered. This could be an influence from his personal life. His son had died of leukemia, a disease that was mostly caused of exposure to radioactivity. Many engineers in the control room disagreed with him and tried to make him aware of the dangers that violating the rules had, but he was determined to do it his way. After a while, the engineers gave up on trying to convince him due to a fear of losing their job. Being engineers had a high standard for them, and they didn't want to lose the privileges that the job brought with it. The main problems that caused the explosion were 1. The shortage of water that cooled the steam and kept the reactant from getting too hot. Also, the low degrees at which it was operating, and the fact that they had removed the charge panels. The explosion of the reactant brought many deaths, and all of the city was affected by it. The radioactivity pollution spread around the whole city, and even little things as videos and flashes from cameras were damaged by it. An example of an exponential decay was the one that occurred in the US with salt. A lawmaker wanted to introduce a legislation that would reduce the consumption of salt as a health measure. This law was never passed, but it did cause some changes in the consumption of it. Many restaurants had to cut back on the amount of salt that they would put on food, and they were mandated to decrease sodium levels by 2.5% per year. An example of exponential growth is in the human population of the United States. If the birth and death rate were to remain logistically stable for the next years, the population seems to be increasing for about 1.5% per year. With this, we can infer how the population will grow in the next years. For a population to double what it is now, it would take for about 50 years.
Exponential growth is when something increases in a multiplicative way and is represented by the function f(x) equal a raised x, and some of its characteristics are that a is greater than 0, its domain are all real, and are continuous functions. But there is also the exponential decay, that is when a is greater than 0 but less than 1.
Nuclear energy has a high quality, which is that the disaster they cause are global and the consequences of this last centuries. A disaster like this implies the contamination of every area for many years. In addition, this environmental contamination is carried by the wind, contaminating more and more the air that we breathe. We don't regard this energy as clean because it produces a large amount of radioactive waste and radioactive contamination around the world. This energy endangers the health of all the people and the environment from the outset.
We are aware that there is a single nuclear plant in Mexico, which is located in Punta Limón in the municipality of Alto Lucero de Gutiérrez Barrios, in the state of Veracruz. But we do not agree with this, saying as we said earlier, these type of plants have very high risk. We will not deny that maybe if they have their advantages, but there are more risk than damage that this can generate. It's not worth risking the lives of people doing this if you can find other alternatives.
The Chernobyl accident could have been prevented by having better informed workers in the plant. The accident occurred because the safety measures were bypassed. After the explosion happened, there was nothing to be done to stop radiation or pollution. We don't think that the radiation reached Mexico since it was really far away, and some of the environmental causes are that 5,000 square kilometer radius people weren't able to live there because of radiation. Crops were contaminated and people still ate them. Severe contamination to this day is still found on forest plants, and radiation is still concentrated in lakes and ponds.
Nuclear weapons can cause great damage globally as radiative contamination, that is, when radioactive material is found in the environment, like water, earth, and air, weakens the ozone layer, damage crops, and damage ecosystems.
What we have felt thanks to this project is a big disappointment of the companies that handle this type of energy, because they put our health at risk. In theory, we are the ones who are putting an end to our own world. We feel bad sadness to think that if we continue as same, we will to end up in a place full of misfortune. That is to say, that thanks to the fact that this energy is extremely dangerous in addition to creating weapons with it, living beings can be damaged internally and externally, ending our lives. Therefore, we think that this type of energy must be reduced in the least possible. Although it has its advantages, it is deadly for us, and each time its compounds are more and more harmful. One of the solutions that we think it could work for is to make a dialogue in the high politics so that they take measures on the control of arms, besides organizing the relations in the politics of the great powers, so that some agreement is reached that reduces in the least the risk of war. We were very desperate because we didn't know who we were working with. We felt very limited to not being able to do many things that we usually do when our team is in our classrooms, besides that it is in our respective campus. The truth is that we thought that this project was going to be more pointing and better prepared. We didn't like it, and if it was difficult, and too much we would say. The only thing we liked is that we could have done this project.